Imagine being the absolute most lethal weapon in an entire empire. Like, feared by kings, feared by criminals. Your name alone is just enough to clear a room.
Right, which is wild to think about.
Totally wild. But now, imagine you're only 16 years old, and your biggest threat isn't, the heavily armed royal guard patrolling the city outside.
Oh, not at all.
Right. Your biggest threat is the man who taught you how to hold a knife in the first place, and the boy sitting across the table who has basically been waiting 8 years for you to make a mistake.
It is just a terrifying position to be in. I mean, you have this supreme physical power, but you are psychologically trapped in a web of manipulation that you can't even see.
Exactly. And that is the exact scenario you were dropped into when you opened today's source material. So welcome back to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are taking a massive stack of reader notes, series timelines, and some really intense psychological character analyses to explore the gritty, high-stakes beginnings of an iconic fantasy universe. We're talking about Throne of Glass.
That's a good one.
It is. Specifically, our mission today is to break down the masterful world building and the intense character dynamics in the very first chapter of the first novella in The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, which is titled The Assassin and the Pirate Lord.
Which I kind of say is just such a fascinating entry point to this massive universe, because the continent of Erilea is incredibly expansive, right? But Maas chooses to start the story in this very localized, incredibly tense room.
Yeah, she really does.
Well,
And for anyone listening who, say, just finished a totally all-consuming fantasy read like, maybe you just finished Fourth Wing and you were sitting there staring at the wall with the ultimate book hangover.
We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, this is exactly the cure you were looking for. But I will say, it is a very different kind of medicine.
Yeah, it really is.
Because, a lot of epic fantasy books, they try to hook you by gently walking you through the shallow end of their lore. You get the map, you get the history lesson, the political alliances, all neatly explained.
Spoon-fed, basically.
Right, spoon-fed. But The Assassin's Blade does not do that. It drops you straight into the deep end of a sprawling criminal underworld, and you just have to figure out how to swim.
It absolutely refuses to spoon-feed you the history of the Adarlan Empire. And, before we even dive into the plot of that first chapter, we kind of have to look at the format itself.
Well, the format debate, yeah.
Yeah, because if you are entering this universe for the first time, you are immediately going to run into the infamous reading order debate. Like, do you start your journey with The Assassin's Blade, or do you read it third or even last after you've read some of the main novels?
I know this is a hotly contested topic among readers, but looking at the sources we've gathered, starting with The Assassin's Blade really seems to be the optimal choice for understanding the mechanics of the world.
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, starting here works perfectly because of how subtle the world building is. Instead of a massive textbook-style info dump about this brutal, conquering empire of Darlan, the narrative just follows our protagonist, Celaena Sardothien, as she's traveling and executing jobs.
You're just riding shotgun with her.
Exactly. You learn about the oppressive geopolitical climate simply by watching a professional operate within it. You see the shadow of the king of Adarlan, not through some boring history lesson, but through the sheer terror he inspires in the criminals who actually live under his rule.
Yeah, it makes the world feel tactile, right? Lived in and genuinely dangerous.
100%.
But there's a catch to that, which is this brilliant nugget I pulled from our reader notes. If you pick up this book and start reading chapter 1, the pacing might feel a little drafty.
Drafty is a good word for it.
Yeah, it can feel abrupt, like you've walked into a movie 10 minutes late.
Yep.
And the mechanism behind that pacing is the format itself. The Assassin's Blade isn't a traditional, cohesive novel.
Right, it's a collection.
Exactly. It's a repackaged release of 5 separate, episodic mini-novellas that were originally published individually before the main series even hit the shelves.
Which completely changes how the narrative has to function. I mean, they were designed as standalone adventures. The Assassin and the Pirate Lord only has, a handful of chapters?
It's a 10, yeah. Super short.
So the connective tissue linking this story to the grander, world-ending plot of the later books is very thin at this stage.
Right, but I want to push back on the idea that this is a flaw, though.
Okay, wait on me.
Because is a fragmented novella format actually better for introducing a complex fantasy world than a dense 1,000-page novel?
Oh, that's an interesting angle.
Think about how we consume media today, right? Committing to a massive multi-season cinematic universe can be exhausting. But watching a character's highlight reel, like an episodic monster of the week setup where the stakes are localized, It completely lowers the barrier to entry.
It really does. You aren't overwhelmed right out of the gate.
Right. You get to see Celaena in her element, just being an absolute menace, long before you have to care about the magical fate of the entire continent.
That is a crucial point. It builds intimacy before it builds scale. You are getting a taste of her lethal skills, her arrogance, and her immediate surroundings.
Yes, the arrogance is definitely there.
Oh, she's so arrogant. But by the time the larger plot kicks in, she isn't just a fantasy archetype to you anymore. She is a deeply flawed, complex person that you are fully invested in.
Which brings us perfectly to the actual opening scene of Chapter 1, where that flawed complexity is just put on full display.
The 4 a.m. scene.
The 4 a.m. scene. So let's set the stage for you. It is 4 in the morning in the city of Rifthold, which is the capital of the Adarlan Empire. Our protagonist, Celaena Sardothien, who, as we established, is widely recognized as the Garland's most feared assassin, has been abruptly awakened.
And she is not happy about it.
Not at all. She's summoned for an emergency meeting at the Assassin's Keep. So she arrives, groggy, totally annoyed, but sharply dressed in this luxurious silk robe. And she steps into a room full of older, hardened, highly dangerous men.
The visual contrast in this scene is doing so much heavy lifting. I mean, you have a 16-year-old girl, physically smaller and vastly younger than the grown men surrounding her.
Men who literally kill for a living.
Exactly. Yet the power dynamics are entirely skewed in her favor. She isn't just permitted to be in the room, she outranks almost everyone there. She is the chosen heir to Arobynn Hamel, the master of the guild.
Okay, let's unpack this guild dynamic, because we often hear fantasy crime syndicates described like they're just modern corporate boardrooms with, I don't know, slightly sharper objects.
Right, the whole assassin CEO vibe.
Yeah, but looking at the sources, that analogy falls completely flat here. Think of Arabynn's Assassin's Guild less like a business and more like a gladiatorial training ring mixed with a cult.
A cult is exactly the right word.
Because your value isn't just based on your output, right? It's based on your absolute dependence on the cult leader. It's a hyper-competitive, cutthroat environment where any sign of weakness is a fatal liability.
And that forces a 16-year-old girl to constantly project what she calls an ebony mask of absolute unshakable confidence.
An ebony mask, yeah.
It is armor, yes, but it is incredibly brittle armor. It grants her anonymity and this fearsome reputation, but it also traps her inside that reputation.
Right, she can never turn it off.
Never. She has to perform the role of Adarlan's assassin flawlessly, because if that mask slips even a fraction, the wolves in that room will tear her apart. I mean, she's a teenager who is explicitly not allowed to exhibit youth, fear, or conscience.
And that brittle armor gets struck with a hammer about 2 seconds into this meeting.
It really does.
So Arobynn Hamel calls the room to order and delivers the news that sparked this whole 4 a.m. gathering. And it is a massive double blow.
Yeah, the hits just keep coming.
First, an assassin named Grigori has been captured by the authorities and is currently being held in the royal dungeons. Second, Ben, who is Arabynn's second-in-command and Celaena's beloved mentor, was killed in action during a botched mission.
The dual nature of her reaction to this news is where we really start to understand her internal wiring. What's fascinating here is how Erelea's justice system works, particularly in the royal dungeons.
It's notoriously brutal.
Completely brutal. A captured assassin is a massive threat to the entire underground network because they will eventually break under torture. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
So when Celaena hears about Grigori, she is coldly, ruthlessly pragmatic.
Oh, totally. Her immediate response is essentially, why are we even debating this? Slit his throat before he talks.
Yeah.
She demands they follow guild protocol and just assassinate their own member to protect their secrets.
Ice cold.
But, and this is a fantastic detail from our character analyses, she absolutely hates Grigori. She holds massive grudges.
She really does.
So she is perfectly comfortable wrapping her personal vendetta against this guy in the neat, professional package of, guild protocol.
Which just shows how deeply Arabynn's conditioning has taken root in her. She can casually order the murder of a colleague without even blinking.
Yeah.
But then the topic shifts to Ben's death. And that carefully cultivated ebony mask just completely shatters. Because Ben wasn't just a coworker. In a place entirely devoid of genuine warmth or safety, Ben was a surrogate father figure.
And this is where the mechanism of her internal conflict is laid bare for you as the reader. You have a girl who has been meticulously trained to be an unfeeling weapon, a machine that executes orders.
Right.
But her fierce loyalty and her immense capacity for love represent an absolute moral line in the sand. She refuses to leave Ben's body to rot. She refuses to be the sociopath the guild wants her to be.
But that refusal to be an unfeeling machine doesn't just put her at odds with her conditioning. It puts a massive target on her back in a room full of people who survive on apathy.
Oh, definitely.
Which brings us to the one person in that room who is perfectly positioned and honestly eager to exploit that vulnerability.
Enter Sam Cortland.
Yes, Sam.
So Sam is 17 years old, just 1 year older than Celaena. And to understand the absolute powder keg of tension between these two, you really have to look at the history of this cult-like meritocracy they grew up in.
Because it goes way back.
Way back. Before Celaena arrived, Sam was the golden boy. He was Arobynn's star pupil, destined to inherit the guild. Then, an 8-year-old Celaena walks through the doors, and Arobynn declares her his successor instead.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And why? Simply because she is better. She's faster, she's deadlier, she's more naturally gifted. And Sam has spent 8 long years resenting her for usurping his life.
He has undermined her at every single turn, and you can just feel the weight of those 8 years of resentment when they start arguing over Ben's body.
The tension is insane.
It is. Celaena declares that she is going to break into the heavily fortified royal castle to retrieve Ben and give him a proper burial. Sam snaps at her, arguing that infiltrating a castle teeming with the king's guards is a suicide mission.
Seems like it's going to expose the entire guild.
Exactly. And the argument escalates so quickly and violently that Sam actually rests his hand on the hilt of his sword.
Okay, let me pause and push back on this for a second.
Yeah.
Because I think the dynamic here is deeply misunderstood if we just view Sam as the jealous rival.
Oh, I agree.
Let's look at the actual mechanism of what Sam is arguing for here. He is looking at the brutal math of their reality.
Yeah.
He is weighing the risk of retrieving one dead body against the lives of dozens of living, breathing assassins in the guild.
That's a fair point.
Right. If he is the one prioritizing the safety of the entire underground organization over his own personal feelings, doesn't that make him a better assassin than Celaena?
Yeah.
Even if she's the better fighter.
Oh, man. That brings up the central philosophical question of the entire book. What does the word better actually mean in a corrupt system? If the definition of a perfect assassin is someone who operates purely on risk-reward metrics, devoid of any human attachment, then yes, Sam is acting like the superior assassin in that moment.
He's followed the rules.
Exactly. Arobynn has trained them to view loyalty as a transactional tool, and Sam has internalized those rules completely.
The guild expects you to bleed for them, but the second you die, you are a liability to be abandoned. Sam accepts that. Celaena violently rejects it.
And that is exactly what makes her a compelling protagonist. Her so-called flaw, her humanity, her inability to sever her emotional attachments is what actually prevents her from becoming a monster.
Right.
It asks the reader this fascinating question. Can you be the perfect killer and still retain your soul?
And the answer, at least in this room at 4 in the morning, seems to be no. The tension between Sam's pragmatism and Celaena's passion nearly turns into a full-on brawl between the two deadliest teenagers in the Empire.
They were ready to go.
They were. Which forces the ultimate authority figure to finally step out of the shadows and intervene. Arobynn Hamel breaks up the fight.
So, what does this all mean? This intervention is just a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
Oh, it's so dark.
It is. To understand the gravity of Arobynn stepping between them, you have to understand how Celaena views him. Our sources highlight that she describes her relationship with Arobynn as this delicate, almost impossible balancing act.
Yeah.
To her, he is a father, a brother, a friend, a teacher, a master, and perhaps even a would-be lover. Though, to be clear, they haven't crossed that final line.
Wait, okay, let's unpack how that dynamic actually functions day to day for a 16-year-old. She is a teenager who ostensibly has limitless money, lavish clothes, and the power to end lives.
She has all this external power.
All of it. Yet she is completely dependent on a man who occupies literally every male role in her life. He's the authority figure, the family, and the romantic prospect. How does someone even begin to process that level of enmeshment?
You don't process it, you survive it. It is designed to be inescapable. Arobynn has positioned himself so that no matter where Celaena turns for validation, she has to go through him. If she wants a father's pride, a master's approval, or a partner's affection, he holds all the keys.
Wow.
And we see the exact mechanism of his control and how he handles this argument. He steps in and issues a sharp public warning to Sam, telling him never to challenge Celaena's authority again.
Which, you know, on the surface, Looks like he's protecting her. He is reinforcing her status as the heir and kind of stroking her ego in front of the entire guild.
Precisely. But then crucially, he does not physically stop Celaena when she declares she's going into the city alone to get Ben's body.
No, he doesn't.
He just lets her walk out the door.
And this is where the genius of his manipulation truly shines. If Arobynn is the absolute master of this guild, he could have easily ordered his guards to lock her in her room.
Without a doubt.
But he knows that if he breaks her spirit completely, he loses his sharpest weapon. So instead, he gives her just enough slack on the leash to make her feel like she's running free.
It is the illusion of autonomy. By allowing her to break the rules to retrieve Ben, he makes her feel independent. She walks away thinking, he respects my merit so much that the rules don't apply to me.
Right, I'm special.
Yeah, I'm the exception. But the reality is that Arobynn is just tallying her mistakes. He is using her fierce loyalty not as a virtue to be cherished, but as a predictable mechanism that he can leverage against her later.
And that controlled rebellion sets the stage perfectly for the overarching plot of the novella. Because Arobynn has established this dynamic, where Celaena feels fiercely independent yet deeply indebted to him, he is able to manipulate her right into her next mission.
Oh, absolutely.
He sends Celaena and Sam away to Skull's Bay to meet with Captain Rolfe, the Pirate Lord.
And just look at how he frames it. He sends them under the guise of seeking retribution or conducting guild business, knowing full well that her heightened emotional state and her moral compass are going to drive her actions.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
He really does, because secretly, he is setting up a massive slave trade deal with the Pirate Lord, intentionally putting her in a position where her humanity will inevitably clash with his absolute authority.
He is testing the very limits of that leash. And that is what makes this first chapter such a dense, brilliant piece of setup. It isn't just a drafty opening where characters yell at each other in the middle of the night.
No, it's doing so much work.
It really is. It establishes the mechanical rules of this cutthroat meritocracy. It introduces the deeply ingrained resentful tension between Celaena and Sam, showing how Arobynn pits them against each other so they never unite against him.
And most importantly, it shows us the cracks in Celaena's ebony armor. Her overwhelming grief over Ben proves that she is more than just a weapon for Arobynn to point and fire.
Yeah.
It shows us the terrified, fiercely loyal girl beneath the mask, fighting to survive in a world that demands she feel absolutely nothing.
It is just a phenomenal hook into a sprawling universe. And we hope this deep dive helps you appreciate the incredible setup work Maas is doing here. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over as you continue your reading journey.
Yeah, something to really chew on.
Something that builds on everything we've just discussed about Arobynn Hamel's methods of control.
Right. So think about this. Arobynn is a master strategist. He operates a highly successful, secretive, underground crime organization where absolutely nothing happens by accident. Every single move is calculated.
Right.
Yet Ben, his seasoned, highly lethal second-in-command, somehow walked right into a deadly trap. Given Arobynn's proven tendency to manipulate his assassins, to pull their strings and isolate them to maintain his own absolute dominance, is it possible that Ben's death wasn't a tragic mistake at all?
Wait, really?
Think about it. Could it have been a calculated move by Arobynn? A deliberate assassination of his own second-in-command designed specifically to sever Celaena's ties to a positive father figure, test her loyalty, and ensure she remains entirely dependent on him.
Oh, wow. If you want to dive into the deep end of the criminal underworld, that is exactly the kind of freezing water that will keep you awake at night. The sheer psychological terror of realizing the architect of your grief is the exact same person wiping away your tears.
It's chilling.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Assassin's Blade. Keep questioning the shadows, keep looking past the masks, and we will see you on the next one.